My sense is it's probably your adapter.
Yeah, probably something with the frame rate and not syncing up right.
Yeah, it's my guess is the adapter itself, not. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for tuning in. The show is about to start soon. So set yourselves ready and have yourself a good show. People will start lining up, and thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
That's right. Hey, how you doing, Maxie?
Oh, thanks.
You're
You're
on
on your line of sight.
Sorry, you got in here safe?
Tim, when I'm done speaking, get out. I will hand this to you. This is Chris's mic. The camera. Because he's recording. Sorry. Max has it for you. Okay, guys, don't give me a hand though. Yeah. So, I don't like this one. So there are two microphones. This is the main one. Oh, and this is for me. Oh, that one's just specifically because he knows he's tried to record me before with a handheld. Okay, so I don't need to give this to him after then. Or does he still need this? Oh, okay. Yeah. And I need to get my glasses. Yeah. Oh. So right now, this is live right now. If I don't get this is and this is a new mixer. Oh, you got a new mixer? Yeah. Nice. So I got this new mixer here, and the logic on the audio was slightly different from my signature one, and I was like, why is
How come you didn't get a digital one?
Huh?
Why don't you get a digital one? Well, besides big money. I was looking at one, the cheapest one I could find that's reasonable, with good specs, $3,500.
Digital? Okay. Because if you're looking for a digital, my signature is on spares and mystery.
No, I want a fully digital that's connected to a laptop, so it can run remotely. That's the idea.
Oh, okay, I understand. the mic is already working. The mics are working right now. And it's always yellow because that's the mixer. Like you see, mic 1, 2, 4, 5. We good? You ready?
Let's go. We've hit the farmer's time.
The mixer is stop the music.
Shane's first.
Shane is first.
Which mic? Any mic? Purple mic? Yellow, red.
Yeah.
This one? I don't care. I can use this one.
And the camera is right. Oh yeah, it's
Am I okay to stand here?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, then you can see it. Okay, folks, we're going to get started. We're at farmer's time now is what I call it. Or, I go to a little church out east of Ponoka, and we call it Asker time. Or I also have made multiple trips to Haiti, and we wouldn't be starting for another hour and a half, so we won't go there. My name is Patty Vold. I live east of Ponoka. I am the East Central Provincial Lead for APP. So that means I have oversee the Lacombe-Ponoka area, the Camrose area, the Drumheller-Stettler area, and Musquatchie's Wetaskiwin area. I do have great regional leaders in all of those places now, so I am so very thankful because it is a schwack of work. When Mitch said I need everybody to give 10 days, I'm way past that. I am way past that, and a lot of the other volunteers are too. So if you haven't given Mitch your 10 days, get on her. And that will be the time to be canvassing and getting petitions. The bathrooms, I believe, are downstairs, down in the foyer level, and the exits are marked. I got to look at my cheat sheet because I don't have a brain. We will be doing question and answers at the end, so be prepared for that. And we'll try to do best. Right now, we've got a bunch of stuff going on because, of course, the question has been approved, and we will be collecting signatures. Now, we can't collect them here today because I will be one of the first to get the fancy lanyard because the provincial reps are first in the queue. So mine might have got started dealing with yesterday. So I don't expect to get it till next Monday because they say it'll take 2 or 3 days to process them, and then they send them out by registered mail. So we won't be expecting to actually collect signatures the 12th, somewhere in there, is my guess. So when we have a meeting in Bashaw on the 17th, we will definitely be able to collect signatures then. So there's that. Any questions about that, hold them till the end, because we'll help you with that as well. Those of you, because I'm going to ask this question, how many of you never been to an APP or a Freedom meeting before? Excellent, thank you. Thank you. So it was started, Alberta Prosperity was started, it's a nonpartisan, not-for-profit educational society. That's who we are. We don't, sometimes we talk about the United Conservative Party because they're the party that actually runs government at this time, right? But we are nonpartisan. And so the movement began in May 2021. Is there anybody in this room that was at that meeting in May 2021 in Nisku? There's a few of you. Oh, excellent. I didn't know that. So the first thing we do, and some people are unsure about doing this, and I say pick your room, but we start with prayer. And that is because, in my reasoning, Canada, Alberta was based on a Judeo-Christian basis. That's where everything comes from. And if you aren't a believer, that's your choice. And that's fine. That sits fine with me. But we're going to start this meeting with prayer, because I'm the MC. God, keep Alberta forever in the palm of your hand. As we spread our wings to be all you've created us to be, may we stay forever free. Help us to serve each other in a way that brings honor and glory to you. When we wander and become self-seeking, I pray you will guide us back to the truth and the light that sets us free. We were born for such a time as this, and I ask for the strength and wisdom we need to move mountains. We need to move people and obstacles that stand in the way of Alberta being all you created it to be. Your word says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, then everything else will be added." Show us the way to do this. Make it clear. Provide godly leaders to lead Alberta in a way that brings honor and glory to you in everything we do. In Jesus' name, amen. My friend sometimes leads with the Lord's Prayer. And that is so sweet, because how many of you said the Lord's Prayer in school? And even if you haven't said it in a while, it comes right back. So our first speaker tonight is Sheane Meikle. And I actually want to introduce Bonnie. Bonnie, can you stand up? I know it's not much different. Chris squats, so it doesn't look so bad. There. So Bonnie is my beautiful regional lead for Lacombe-Ponoka area. And Sheane, her husband, has graciously also stepped up to be my regional lead for Musquecheese-Wetaskiwin. So a lot of, no, sometimes he's not. So we work together as well. So if you have a question and you just can get a hold of me, that's fine. I'll shoot the question to whoever it's supposed to go to. So Sheane is going to come up. He's had a varied and interesting life. And he is going to talk about Alberta history. So Sheane Meikle. Okay, also, yes, thank you. We have two separate tables at the back. And the one under the clock is Alberta Prosperity Project. The one by the stairs is Stay Free Alberta. So we have to keep those two things separate. So the one at the back, where Margaret and Lacey and Bonnie are at, they will be collecting names if you want to be a canvasser, so actually collect the signatures. And they cannot come help me over at the APP table. We have to keep them separate, like whatever, the bulls and the cows when you don't want things to happen. So, and otherwise we can, if we don't do that, Elections Alberta can shut the whole thing down. So we're going to keep it clean. So now Sheane can come talk.
I'm not allowed to use this microphone. I have to use this one blanket because when I use the handheld, I go like this all the time and it's all over the place. So he makes me use a stand mic. Alberta absolutely needs to become an independent nation. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, we just need to get the current government out of power and then we'll be fine. But I'm about to tell you a few things, and I'm only going to be touching on some of the highlights, not even close to half of the things that has happened throughout history with Alberta and Ottawa. But once I'm done, you'll see clearly that it is not just the current government that we need to get out. Alberta has never had a fair shake and never will under the current constitution. The first thing that I will talk about is in the 1880s, the reason that Alberta actually became a province, everybody know how much the American influence was in Alberta in the 1800s. So from 1880 to 1903, there was a huge movement of American settlers up here. How many people here know the little spit on the map called USONA? Do you know what USONA stands for? The United States of North America. How many people here know the town of Rimbey? Do you know what Rimbey's original name was? Kansas Ridge. The town of Airdrie, Yankee Valley. So one of the big reasons that they took Alberta from being a territory, well, the Northwest Territories, and split it up, they took it was because they did not want, under a territory, it's a lot easier for them to be absorbed by another country. And they did not want the territories to be absorbed by the United States. So that was one of the big influences in why they made Alberta and Saskatchewan provinces, was to make it so that there was a buffer between the Northwest Territories and the U.S. And to kill off that mentality that was going on in the 1800s to try to join the United States. In 1903, the then Interior Minister, Clifford Sifton, who was involved in writing the Alberta Act and the forming of Alberta and Saskatchewan, made the following quote: "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity." So even before Alberta became a province, and Saskatchewan as well, there was the mentality was that we were just going to ship all of our goods and services to them, and they would prosper, and we would just be there. So how many people in here have read the Alberta Act or the Saskatchewan Act, because they're identical except for the two terms, that was formed on September 1st, 1905? I would encourage you to read the Alberta Act. I read it at the age of 13, and I've been for independence ever since. When we were formed as a province, but we were given the rights and privileges of the territories. We have been fighting ever since 1905 to get the same rights as other provinces. Alberta and Saskatchewan are the only two provinces that came in by an act of legislation rather than by negotiation. Every other province negotiated their way into Confederation. We were brought into Confederation under an act of legislation. In 1913, the Railway Act amendments were brought in. And what that did, it said that any local railway could not cross the provincial border. Not only could they not cross the provincial border, their equipment couldn't. So let's say that you loaded grain in Stettler, headed for Thunder Bay. Your equipment, your grain would get loaded in Stettler, go to the Saskatchewan border, get offloaded, loaded onto Saskatchewan Central Railway, loaded from there over to Manitoba, picked up by the Manitoba Railways, and all the way. But there was one thing. The eastern provinces were all made exempt from it. And the Railway Act led to most of the local railways going out of business. One good example is, how many of you have noticed that big cement pillar on Taylor Drive that says Alberta Central Railway? They were one of the biggest affected by it because they were one of the larger ones. And in 1939, they went out of business and were absorbed by the then newly founded CN Rail, which was at that time owned strictly out of the east. So you had the Grand Trunk Railway and you had the CN Rail as of 1939. The Grand Trunk then became Canadian Pacific. And it was their way of putting out the small western railways out of business. In 1930, the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement was instituted by Ottawa. Now, we'll be discussing it a little later on, but just think of this in some ways as the National Energy Program version 1.0. And that made it so that we could not sell our natural resources without the permission of the federal government, which under the Constitution as a province, they did not have the right to say that. But they did it, and that it went from 1930 until 1958, where we could not move our product without permission from the federal government. December 11th of 1931, everything should have changed a little bit because that's when the Statute of Westminster came in. What the Statute of Westminster did is it gave sovereignty to the provinces over their land and resources. So one of the big things that we could do with that, and it's still in effect now, is you'll hear arguments from people, well, the national parks, what are you going to do about them? They're federal property. No, they're not. They are under the Statute of Westminster, they are Alberta's. And we could remove them. And if we removed them, we wouldn't have things like Jasper happen again. It is not under the Constitution and the Statute of Westminster, it is not federal jurisdiction. In 1935, now a lot of farmers in this room, 1935, the Canada Wheat Board came in as a voluntary product. And when it was first introduced, it was Canada-wide, and it was voluntary. Then in 1943, it was made mandatory, but it was only made mandatory for Western Canada. Eastern Canada, it was not mandatory. So if I wanted to sell grain to somebody in the States, here in Western Canada, I would have to take and pull up to the elevator on one side of the elevator, sell it to the wheat board, pull around my truck around to the other side and reload that exact grain and pay them an extra profit on it. And then I could take it down to the States. If you lived in Ontario, you could just take it directly to the United States. That one was a big one, and thankfully for a bunch of farmers in the late 90s and early 2000s that said enough is enough, and several farmers out of Saskatchewan and southern Alberta actually went to jail over it. And in 2012, it was finally scrapped. So for over 60 years, we could not move our grain internationally without going through the wheat board. One more way that we were being held down. In 1947 to 1950, in addition to the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement, we had in place the federal control of oil pricing and pipelines. Does that sound familiar to modern day? Well, they not only could control our what we produced, but how much we could charge for it, and whether we could build a pipeline to do it. Now we come to 1965. How many people, there's no flag, Canadian flag in this hall, know the history of the anti-Western sentiment that the red maple leaf represents? Very few people, and there's a lot of people that are my age or older in this room. It is something that really got pigeonholed in a quick hurry. In 1965, they went from the red ensign to the maple leaf, but not a single Western MP voted for the maple leaf. The reason being, as Diefenbaker said at the time, Western Canada does not have the sugar maple. How is that representative of all of Canada? And Pearson wanted that flag, and he forced closure on it and made it a mandatory vote. So it ended up being forced down the throat of all Canadians. In fact, there was so much resentment at the time that in 1967, on the 100th anniversary of Canada, most towns would only fly the red ensign in celebration. They would not fly the maple leaf. But by the time I started school in the very early 70s, never heard anything about the controversy. It had already been pigeonholed, or memory hold, I should say. It was one of those things that was one of the fastest propaganda things that ever happened. Within 5 years, nobody even remembered. It just seemed to disappear, the controversy over it. That is why I do not actually recognize the Canadian flag as my flag. And it's still legal to be the red ensign. Is still a legal flag of Canada. They never got rid of it. That is the flag of Canada, in my opinion, because the sugar maple is an Eastern-only symbol. In 1973 to 1974, you had the oil export taxation policies, and Alberta's oil profits were capped. That meant that anything over a certain amount went straight to Ottawa. We couldn't make the profit off of it as a province. They capped our production, and they capped our profits. It kind of sounds familiar what they're doing under the guise of carbon tax, but it's very similar. But our premier at the time fought for Alberta, and it only lasted a year for that to be in it. But they weren't ready to let us go. So in 1980, they brought in the National Energy Program. And the National Energy Program basically did the same thing in what it controlled to and controlled our natural resources. And that stayed in effect until 1988 when Brian Mulroney revoked it. Now, you may say, well, okay, a conservative government came in, so they revoked it. He did not revoke it because he was a conservative. He revoked it because oil prices dropped so much that it cost more for them to administer it than it was worth, than they were getting back in through it. So that is the only reason that they got rid of the National Energy Program. Otherwise, if oil prices would have stayed high, the 80s oil crash probably did us more good that way, because if it would have, we'd probably still be fighting it over that one. Now I'm going to jump forward for a few decades because my time is limited. But there was lots of small things that were happening in the 80s, including 80s and 90s, including the Constitution and things like that. But the next big thing that they did against Alberta was in 2012 when they brought in Bill C-38, which was the Growth and Prosperity Act, which gave Ottawa control over all of Alberta's projects. So we could not, and we just finally got them to put it, it's still there, but it's on a hiatus, technically. So they can bring it back whenever they want. It means that they have full control, even though constitutionally they do not have the right to control our projects. In 2016, they brought in the federal carbon pricing. And that was just yet another way to control Alberta's economy. Back when the National Energy Program was being brought in, then Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau made the statement that they were bringing in the National Energy Program to make sure that Alberta did not become the economic engine of Canada. Well, we have become that. We are that. And that is why they are bringing in all these other things against Alberta, because they do not want us to be the economic engine of Canada. So they are going to try and do everything they can to stifle our economy. And to that effect, in 2019, they brought in Bill C-69, which is the No More Pipelines Act, and they brought in Bill C-48, which is the tanker ban off the West Coast, which is absolutely makes no sense whatsoever, because we have American tankers go along that coast continually, yet we cannot compete because we can't have our tankers go along that coast. So they'll go up and they'll load in Anchorage and then they'll come down the coast, and they have as much. We've never had a disaster over there. The Americans are the only ones that had the Valdez. We didn't, so why are they banning our tankers? So, now that what I have gone through today is only touches on less than a quarter of the major things that they have done, and it's to show you that no matter what government is in Ottawa, it doesn't matter if it's conservative or if it's a liberal, whichever government, they are never going to do things that are to the benefit of Alberta. That it's always going to be to the benefit of the East. Thank you very much. And the next speaker up will be Mr. Tim Hoven.
We just have to dim the light so you fine people can see the screen. And I'll just get it focused for you all. Shane, where is the focus? Right there. And the screen keeps blipping out. Okay.
That's full cinematic.
So my name is Tim Hoven. My name is Tim Hoven. I am a rancher from the eastern edge of Clearwater County. My farm has been in the family since 1908 when my great-great-grandfather came up from South Dakota. They were down in the States. They looked at the economic opportunities. They looked at the expansion of the federal government into the western states, and they said they wanted a new beginning. So at the age of 58, he sold what they had in South Dakota, loaded everything up on a train, and came north. And then after 4 generations, here I am farming that same land, currently raising the next generation. My wife and I have been married for 30-some years. We've got 8 kids, and we're very blessed. We have 3 grandchildren now, with another one on the way in January, in 3 weeks. So we're all very excited. So when I talk about Alberta independence, I'm not just talking about what's in it for me. I'm looking at it, what's in it for my children, my grandchildren, and my great-great-grandchildren. So if you are driving down a road, it's a beautiful summer day, you're driving down this road, wind blowing through your hair because it's a convertible, and you see up ahead there's a huge cliff. And at the speed you're going, you are going to fly off that cliff in just a few minutes. Does it make any sense to only slow down? Of course not. If you slow down, and then the pointer stops working. There we go. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Technical difficulties. If you slow down, you're still going off the cliff. Slowing down doesn't change your situation in life. When we look at everything the federal government is doing and is planning to do to you, regular, ordinary, everyday Albertans, it's worse than going off a cliff. Last year in the spring, the government released a report. Actually, it was leaked out of the Prime Minister's office, the Privy Council, and it's called Future Lives, Social Mobility in Question. What social mobility is, it's if you are born poor and you work hard, can you go up from lower class to middle class? And if you're middle class, can you work hard and through smart decisions move up to be upper class? Can you improve your life? Well, in Canada, it's going to be very hard. They looked at the year 2040 and were saying, what is going to be going on in Canadians' lives? One of the reports, one of the things they said is that people may start to hunt, fish, and forage on public lands without following the rules. Why? Not because we love hunting and fishing, but because many Canadians will be so broke that they won't be able to afford food. In 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many. Most new homeowners get help from family members. So this is the Prime Minister's office admitting that in 14 short years, most people will not be able to afford a home. In 2040, people will see inheritance as the only way to improve their lives. The only way to move up in that social hierarchy is to wait for your parents to die and you get the wealth that the family's accumulated over time. So all your hard work doesn't matter. All your hard work is going to go to pay taxes and buy the necessities for life. Now, 2040 is 14 years from now. I don't know about all of you, but I know people who right now can't afford to buy a home. I know people who are hunting and fishing, primarily hunting, to get food because they can't afford meat in the grocery store. And I hope my children aren't waiting for me to die to get their inheritance. The same year, there was a secret RCMP report that was leaked. And what it said, the number one security concern of the RCMP in the next 5 years before 2030 was that the average ordinary Canadians would realize how broke and destitute they actually are, and they would become the biggest security risk to the government of Canada. You can go online, you can Google up both those reports, and you can see them for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. So right now, we've got the government saying in 15 years things are not going to be good. We've got the RCMP saying in 5 years things are not going to be good. And so what does the government do? Instead of focusing on fixing crime, doing something about immigration, doing something about affordability and cost of living, protecting Canada's economic interests, having a decent budget, all they've done is they're putting laws in to increase the surveillance state so they know who the troublemakers are. They're bringing in Bill C-8, which is so that at the signature of a minister, if you say something they don't like, they can take you off the internet. So they can stop you from accessing your online bank. They can stop you from emailing people. And that's not without a court order. That's just a minister thinking, well, this guy, Chris Scott's no good, we'll blacklist him. In Bill C-9, they can jail you for a meme you share on the internet. Bill C-21, gun confiscation. It's only going to get worse. The rifles and firearms that the government is going to be taking from you. You can have a gun safe full of weapons, be perfectly legal one day, and the next day, because the RCMP decided it, you're now a criminal because you have illegal weapons. And then foreign spending and aid. How much money is our government throwing into the Ukraine right now? Billions. So two big concerns that I haven't covered yet that affect every single Canadian who's alive today and will be alive for the next 200 years. Inflation. This chart shows the increase in the money supply. So every year, the federal government just makes more money. They print more money. They borrow more money. And it goes out into the economy. And if the economy grows 8% a year and the government prints 8% more money, everything stays the same. The value of your dollars remains the same. The problem we're having, the Canadian economy is not growing as fast as the money is being printed. So what happens? The money you have is worth less every day. In fact, if you had $100,000 in savings, it's about $20 a day that the value is just disappearing. So on January 1st, 2024, if you had $100,000 just in a savings account and you don't touch it, in 1 year, you still have $100,000 cash, but it's worth less. It's worth $92,000. And a year later, it's worth $84,000. And then that's today, or this time, January 1st, 2026, $84,000. And next January, if you don't do anything with that money, it's now only going to be worth $77,000. So you've lost a quarter of the value of your money. I work very hard for my money. I'm sure everyone in this room has. And because of the federal government policy, they're literally stealing the life and the energy that you put into your wealth so they can just keep this broken economy going. My husband and I were talking last night about how not my husband, by the way. My husband and I were talking last night about how a 12-pack of drinks is $9 now and how in 2020 I used to buy them 4 for $10. I decided to go into my Walmart app and see what I was paying for a random grocery order back then. In January 2020, I paid $70 for 30 items. So I added all of them to the cart again and repurchased them. Today, those 30 items were $165. That's a $95 increase in 4 years. That's 135% inflation. That's what expanding the money supply does to everyone. So it's a real world impact that Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau's decisions are affecting you and your ability to provide for your family. How depressing is this? In 2025, the average Canadian family will earn $158,000 in income, so 2 incomes in one house, and pay an estimated $68,000 in taxes. So if you started working January 1st, by June 7th, you've worked half the year just to feed the government. And we all know how trustworthy and responsible in spending that money this government is. So the average tax per family is about $68,000. But here's the thing, the federal government spends $120,000 per family. So almost double. They need twice as many families in Canada just to get to a break-even point in their annual budget. This is not magic socialism. This is not you put in $60,000 and the government magically turns it into $120,000 for everyone's benefit. That is debt that they are putting on your children, your grandchildren, and your great-great-grandchildren. So effectively, a family in the future is paying for what the federal government is spending today. And it's not just the federal government, it's all 3 levels of government. It's the feds, it's the province, it's the local municipalities. It takes 2 families to generate enough taxes. It's absolutely unbelievable how they spend. Now, why can't the government stop spending money? Isn't it just easy? You know, if you lived your life like that, if you're maxed out on your credit cards, you have to stop spending or else the bank's going to be coming, they're going to take your house, they're going to take your car, they're going to destroy your life. The government literally can't stop spending. They can't stop this train. If the government increased interest rates to slow down how much money we borrow, which would decrease the money supply, if the interest rates doubled right now, how many people would lose everything? They have to keep the interest rates down. They have to let people keep borrowing as much money as they can just so the economy doesn't crash. If the government went to a balanced budget, if someone got elected and said, hey, we're going to fix things right now just by not spending more money, how many people would the government have to fire over the next 12 months? Half? We have no idea. If the unemployment rate shot up from 5% to 20% because the government decided to have a balanced budget, the economy once again would fall apart. So the federal government can't stop spending money without sinking the whole economy. They can't stop the train. I'm a farmer. I had 3 kids hit the ditch this Christmas season, if you can believe. So I had to get the tractor. I had to pull them all out. But as we hooked that tractor up to the vehicle and towed them out, where is that chain going to break when I'm pulling them out? The weakest link, right? And if I would take that chain and I fix the second weakest link and the third weakest link and the fourth weakest link, when I went to pull the kids out of the ditch, where's that chain still going to break? At the weakest link. And we have a government that is avoiding the weakest link, and they're spending money fixing everything else, but it's the weakest link that needs to be fixed. I think that weakest link right now for Albertans is that your vote, your influence in the federal government is less than anyone else across Canada. The approximate average population for federal riding in 2021 in Alberta, each riding has about 135,000 people in it. So you are one vote out of 135,000. If you look at the Maritimes, for their MPs, they're one vote out of about 85,000. So their vote is worth more than yours. You think it would be a pretty easy, simple thing to do. We're going to make it fair across Canada. We're going to make every vote be the same. But they won't do it because they have the power and we don't. They have the influence and we don't. This guy, everyone's favorite Albertan, Thomas Lukaszuk, he had his petition. Do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? And there were lots of people who signed it. It's the elbows up crowd. You know, they are in love with the idea of Canada. They're in love with the images of Canada. They're in love with the thought of the maple leaf. And they just haven't spent time to look at the actual situation we find ourselves in. Sheane kind of brought this up earlier in his talk, the maple leaf. This is from 1972. This is seconds after Henderson scored for Canada in the Summit Series against the Soviet Union. This one goal totally changed Canadian history. They took an image, the maple leaf, that was important to a very few people across Canada, and because of this goal, it made everyone love the maple leaf from coast to coast. Images are so important. Images are how you see things in your mind, and you might not understand them, but that goal changed everything. When people think about Canada now, they think, man, are we good hockey? We've got the best hockey players in the world. The World Juniors are going on, we're going to win. But they don't think about all the other way more important things that define our lives and make our lives worth living and make our lives more prosperous. This is a picture I found on the internet about 6 months or a year ago, I guess now. If you can't see it, it's called The Flood by Joseph Zier Court. It's from 1827. It's called the flood. There's a man on a rock, and a flood came, people are drowning, and the man has a choice. Do I save my father who's drowning in front of me? And if you look at the guy on the rock, he's stretching, he's doing everything. He's putting his life at risk to save his father. And right next to him is his wife and his child. And this man is going to sacrifice his wife and his child to save his old father. What it means, what the painter was trying to say, is that struggling to save the past is your doom. Clinging to the past brings death to you. You will sacrifice the present and your future for the past. And right now, we as Albertans, many Albertans, are choosing to sacrifice our future and our children and grandchildren's future because of a goal that took place in 1972. I had two grandsons who spent the night at our house over the Christmas holidays. And I actually have this, I blew this up and printed up a nice big photo of that. And I have it in my bedroom. And as we were tucking Eli into bed at night, he looked at it and he said, "That little baby's really scared." And my wife said, "Oh yes, he is very scared." And then he said, "Why isn't the man saving the baby?" And I guess that's a question I have for everyone in this room. Why are we fighting to save the past, a broken past, and looking at the future laws that the Liberal government are going to enforce on us? That's what all those Forever Canadian people are fighting to save. They're trying to save a broken future instead of taking a risk and trying to save the future. You can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot have both. As someone who gets death threats occasionally online for my positions, and as I read on Twitter, people are saying people who want a free Alberta are seditious, they're treasonous, they should be arrested, they should be locked up. It is not comfortable to have this position. It takes courage to say, I want freedom. But you can't have both. We know where comfort leads us. We know that car is going to be heading off the cliff. I will read this to you. This is a post that someone put on Reddit on January 5th, 2013, so 13 years ago. There will be no collapse the way that some of these people think of it. It's not going to be the movie Dawn of the Dead or whatever, where one day suddenly crap hits the fan and prices skyrocket and everyone begins to riot, and then the SS comes marching down the street to kill everyone. There will be no happening. It's far more insidious than that. Read the poem The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot and you'll understand. You'll just notice that every day simple things will become a lot more expensive. Everyone's homes and apartments will get smaller. Your work hours will get longer, but your pay will decrease. You'll see family and friends less and find that in time you care less about them. Every day you'll find yourself lowering your standards for everything, for work, for food, for relationships. Job security will no longer exist as a concept. You notice houses and apartments shrinking. People will start hanging on to clothing longer and longer. Less people will get married, even less will have children. People will engross themselves in technological distractions like our iPhones and fantasy while never truly experiencing the real world. Whatever dream people used to have about what their lives were going to be will become for them a distant memory. The only thing left for them will be the reality of their debt and their poverty. And every minute of every day, they will be told that they are stupid, ugly, and weak, but together in our communist utopia, we are free, prosperous, and safe. And that is the collapse. The reduction of the Canadian person into a feudal serf, incapable of feeling love and hate, incapable of seeing the pitiful nature of their situation for what it is, and recognizing their own self-worth. So 13 years ago, this guy could see what was coming. It's useless to wait. It's useless to wait for a breakthrough, for the revolution, the nuclear apocalypse, or a social movement. To go on waiting is madness. The catastrophe is not coming. It's not off in the future. It's right here now. We are situated within the collapse of our country. We're in the beginning of the end right now. It is within this reality that we must choose sides. You're forever Canadian, or you're stay free Alberta. That's the choice we have to make. The future is coming whether we like it or not. Every night we go to sleep and we wake up the next day, we're one day closer to the future that either we want for our lives or the future that Mark Carney wants for your life. And we have to choose. We have to choose a side. We have to choose a future to fight for. So here's a question you might not get asked very often. Maybe you've never been asked it before. What do you want your future to be like? What do you want the future to be for your children and grandchildren? Because you do get to choose. There's a story from Egyptian mythology of the phoenix. Now, the phoenix was a very intelligent, very smart, very beautiful bird. And it would look over the society, and when it could see that the end was coming, there's going to be some dramatic, drastic change, it would make a nest, it would burrow down into it, it would start flapping its wings until it bursts into flame, and it would kill itself and burn its nest straight into ash. That is where we are right now. Everything the federal government is doing is going to be reducing everything across this once great country to ash. Our healthcare system is deteriorating. Our schools are deteriorating. The social fabric is deteriorating. Crime is increasing. Is there anything good going on right now in this country? Everything is turning to ash. And we have to choose, either we rise up out of that or we stay comfortable and lose everything. What we become is up to us. In the story of the phoenix eventually rises again out of the ashes. It becomes more beautiful, more intelligent, more prosperous than ever before, and that is what I believe Alberta can be. We can write a better future for our children and grandchildren. So what do you need to do? You can't just let the leaders at those back tables do all the work, because there's not enough of them to do it. It's what do you need to do? The first thing, you need to care. You need to care more about the future for your children and grandchildren than you care about Canada winning the World Juniors tournament this weekend. This has to be the number one thing in our lives this year and every year after that. We have to start thinking, what kind of world do we want in 100 years? And then we have to start acting to make that come alive. The second thing, you need to hope. My wife and I went on a holiday. We took two of our kids down to El Salvador just a month and a half ago. I don't know if you know much about El Salvador, but it was a hellhole. They went through about 20 years of a civil war. About a third of the population left El Salvador and went to the US and Canada because it was so horrible to live. They elected a president, and the first thing he did was he arrested all the gangs. The gangs had moved in from from the United States into El Salvador and effectively were a shadow government. When I was at the El Salvador, I went to a conference, I listened to a talk by a coffee farmer, and he had left the farm and went to live in the States. He said, my dad had to pay a 15 to 20% interest rate on his line of credit, and then when the gang showed up, you had to give them whatever they wanted or they would kill you. So Bukali, the president, made some prisons and arrested all the bad guys, and you cannot believe the change in how the people are feeling, how they are acting, and their hope for the future. One of the things he's done is he promised to build 2 schools every day because no one had spent any money on education for decades. So he built these schools, and it's great to have schools, but you have to have students for them. This man I talked to, he said the greatest miracle in El Salvador is that 10 years ago, kids wouldn't want to go to school. Why do the work? I'm just going to have to join a gang. It's wasted effort. But now, the young people have so much hope for the future, they want to stay in school. And he said that is the true miracle, to take these kids and give them hope. Thirdly, you need to act. You can't stay home. You can't sit on the couch and watch your hockey or your Netflix. You need to get involved. You need to go to meetings. You need to talk to your neighbors. And you need to bring about the change that we need to see in this province. At some point, you will have to stop running and take a stand. Either you, your children, or your grandchildren. And it's better you than them. For any young people in the audience tonight who are thinking they're too young to get involved, they're too young to make a difference, these are the ages of the Founding Fathers back in 1776 when they signed the Declaration of Independence. James Monroe was 18. Aaron Burr was 20. John Marshall was 20. Alexander Hamilton was 21. James Madison was 25. Benjamin Rush was 30. John Jay was 30. Thomas Jefferson was 33. Thomas Paine was 39. And George Washington was an ancient 44 years old. You might see, some older guys up here talking, but I need to encourage every young person here. Politics is not an old person's game. It needs to be a game of the young because it's your future that you are fighting for. And that's it. My name's Tim Hoven. My website's timhoven.com. If you want more information, you can go there and sign up. Oh, one more thing. When they signed the Declaration of Independence, there was about 30% of the people who were in favor of separating from England. 30% of the people were loyalists. They wanted to keep that king and love him till the end. And then the 30% in the middle just didn't care. They didn't make a choice. And Alberta's right in that same situation. About 30% are in favor, 30% are opposed, but the majority are people in the middle. And we need everyone in this room to work, to act, so we can reach the 30% in the middle. Thank you very much.
There. Turn on the good lights so I look good, Shane. Don't turn on the... So, I'm going to ask, how many got a text from me yesterday? You did? Yeah, some of them did. Because I spent many hours sending out texts, sending out posters yesterday. That is something that you can do. If you get a text or you see a poster and you drop it on your phone, text everybody you know that poster. That's part of being a volunteer. When Tim says we have to have courage, sometimes I'm not. I think, what am I doing? If what I'm doing and my name is out there, because every text I send, my name is on there. What if it affects my family negatively? And I have a large family. I have 14 grandchildren. I'm ahead of Tim. I have 5 biological kids and 4 adopted. What if what I'm doing negatively affects them? And so you think about that, but I can't sit in that. Because we have to be like our grandparents. Our great-grandparents are our great-grandparents. I talk about my one great-grandmother. They moved from a house in England with servants to a granary in Hazar. Can you imagine the courage that took for her to do that? It was for the weather was sunnier, yes. The winters might have been a little chilly, but it's dry. We're not the wet cold in England. We have to put on that heart. And yeah, most of us in this room are 60 plus. I start to get my check in a couple weeks. Yay. But I have a 4-month-old in my yard. So when we start to get tired and we start to think what I'm doing doesn't matter, I don't care if I want you to all be canvassers. Because if you get 10 signatures, that's great. If you get 110, that's great. But every signature counts. And when Tim talked about Thomas Lukasik, he's going to be out there. He's already said he's going to be there. So we'll have our canvasser step up, and Lukasik's going to be over here telling lies about the CPP. That everybody's going to lose their CPP. And it's an outright lie. It is absolutely bold-faced, illegal, etc. So we have to be brave. And we have to be courageous. We are in a war. We are absolutely in a war. And some of my family says, well, what if? And I go, we can't do the what ifs. We have to be brave. We have to step out. We have to step out of our comfort zone. You have to talk to people that maybe you wouldn't normally talk to. In a grocery store line. So our next speaker has stepped out of his comfort zone. And he's become my friend. He actually texts me sometimes. His name is Chris Scott. He stepped out of his comfort zone, and he got his knuckles royally wrapped for that. And he's going to tell his story or not tell his story. You can ask Chris when he's going to talk about, and he'll have written his speech 3 times on the way. Now, he didn't have time to write it 3 times today, but I don't know what he's going to tell you. But I do know that we all need to have courage. And come to meetings, encourage people to come to meetings. Because when my grandson comes over to me and he looks at brochure and he says, I show him the disparity between what Alberta sends to the federal government and what Quebec receives. He's 11. And he says, well, that's not fair. If an 11-year-old can get it just from that one little perspective, those 30% that are sitting on the fence, that's the 30% we need to get. And that's you guys talking to your neighbors. And if you go on the APP website, there are more events up there than there has ever been before. Sometimes when I look on my calendar, there are 3 or 4 events on a day. So there's no excuse that your friend's neighbor's second cousin's third wife can't get to a meeting somewhere. Chris, just come and take it. Do you want this or this? Okay.
Well, thank you, Patty. I'm going to text you.
Okay. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
That's true. At the Whistle Stop Cafe. Yeah, I actually have a whole bunch. Remember when PV Mart went out of business and then came back to business? I bought all the boots and cameras, so I've got so many. She's telling me what to do. Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming. It's awesome to see so many people here, especially considering how, our town is small. We have like 400 or 500 people. So to see this many people in a room is very encouraging. Patty's right. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about right now, except I want to share a couple things with you. The term GDP was mentioned earlier. Oh, I'll mention it, yes. So before I start, I want to let you all know that these things are not funded by foreign interests, like some people say. We don't have giant US oil companies backing us. It's funded by people who are concerned about the future of Alberta. So every time we do an event like this, they pass a bucket around, people throw a couple bucks in, few thousand, whatever, whatever you happen to have on you. And that's how we continue to do these things. So they're going to do that right now. And whatever, if you feel like you can support this kind of thing, throw a couple bucks in there. If you can't, it's not a big deal. But it is you folks that drive this movement. It is really a grassroots thing. So while Shane's passing the bucket around and the coins are jingling, I'm going to share with you something I've learned about Canada's GDP. And then Alberta's GDP compared to Ontario's GDP. Gross domestic product is an indicator of economic activity. This is what I've learned. It's how much money is moving around the country. And in the last little while, I don't know if you've felt it, but as a business owner, I have felt things are tighter. Like when I go to the store, prices of things I buy are higher. It seems like there's a little bit less money all the time. But I'm seeing on the news smiling politicians and people saying, oh no, Canada's growing, our GDP is growing. This is the fastest GDP growth we've seen in years. Everything's great. And they put on these big smiles as they're walking into Parliament, and then they act like zoo animals not getting anything done. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't make any sense because the numbers say things are great, the economy's booming, we're coming back, the elbows up is working. But it doesn't feel like it. So I start looking into this. And what I realized was nothing short of, well, I wish it was shocking, but honestly, it wasn't. When it comes to GDP, when it comes to economic activity, if somebody in, say, the Middle East is a trans person and somebody misgenders them there and they leave their country and they come to Canada, they can enter Canada under I can't remember what the program's called, but it's like the LGBTQ plus refugee program. Canada sponsors people in that group to come to Canada fleeing persecution because of their sexual identity, gender, whatever. We pay them. It's $3,000 to $5,000 each to settle here, and then $800 to $1,200 per month. Those monies are counted as GDP. 1 in 10 Canadians is either employed directly by government or works for some sort of bureaucracy or administration for government. 1 in 10. All of those people, all of their wages, all of the things they buy are included in our GDP. So when you think about this, there's two distinct groups. There's the value-creating economy. Alberta is largely value-creating. We extract resources, we upgrade them, we sell them, we build things. We sell it on the market, we trade with our neighbors. They're assets that can be traded globally and can be included in foreign exchange. And then there's the other economy that only exists because of the value created on the other side. Finance, real estate, bureaucracy, government, those types of things. It's not a new created value, it's a value taken from something else. So I realized, wait a minute, that's the reason why it appears as though Canada is doing so well. It appears as though on paper, Canada, the economy is booming because we're counting all those things. But when you take into account the fact that a lot of that number is not new value, it's parasitic draw on the value creators, it's a very, very different picture. And I actually started thinking about this when I saw, I think it was coming out of the United States, somebody was talking about how many people they fired. It was like a massive federal bloat cut. And they said, you know what? We could make our numbers look good by hiring more politicians and paying them more. It increases our GDP because they're earning money and that counts. And we didn't. Instead, we're getting rid of that because we want the value creators to stop getting taxed to death. And so I started looking into what's going on in Canada. And then all of a sudden, this argument about Alberta independence comes up because I say, when Alberta becomes independent and we leave Confederation, it's going to hurt Canada, right? It will. We are 15.8% of the national economy, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize and acknowledge that Alberta is a value creator. We extract resources, we sell them, we upgrade them, we build things, we sell it on the open market. So that 15% is very, very strong. That 15% fuels a lot of the non-value created economy that lives off of it. Ontario, in comparison, their GDP is like 38% of Canada's GDP. 80% of their economy is based on non-original value created things. Real estate, finance, bureaucracy, those types of things. So if you consider that, when Alberta leaves, that's going to be a real slap. The reality is going to slap people in the face, and they're going to realize, wait a minute, Alberta was carrying Canada economically on its back. And that's not to be boastful, it's the truth. We work hard, we produce things, and we carry the country. We have help from other people as well, Saskatchewan, British Columbia. Ontario has other stuff, automotive, aluminum, steel, which together don't even come close to our canola export in Western Canada, by the way. And I tell you these things because lately the attacks against Alberta independence have been ramping up. And that means that we're doing our job and people are paying attention, and now we're not just some fringe group, howling in the wind. People are paying attention and they're starting to oppose. And the opposition points that they're bringing up, I've found, are almost entirely things that when you dig into them and get the facts, there are reasons why Alberta needs to be independent. And I should have led with this, but let me ask you. Is there anybody here who isn't sold on the idea of Alberta independence yet? Don't be shy. If you are, I legitimately want to know. Like, you're among friends here. I realize that a lot of people come. Yeah, Carl, yeah, right.
I identify as forever Canadian.
No, you don't. I know people come to these things. Maybe I would say I've met people that come to these events because they want to challenge the notion that Alberta can be independent. And I always invite people, I say thank you for coming first, and I invite them to actually challenge me. If you have a reason why you believe Alberta can't be independent, I want to hear it. I want you to tell me how I'm wrong in saying that Alberta independence is not only necessary, but it is inevitable. So please, if you have one of those comments, save it for later or, stand up and shout it out at me right away, and I'll deal with it. But my point is, yeah, well, he mentioned equalization. Alberta already had a referendum, and 67% of us said we don't want to be paying equalization anymore. That has been a thorn in our side for decades. But we didn't fill rooms like this because of equalization, did we? We didn't. We paid too much taxes. We knew that we were producing, that we were being abused by the East. We knew that we were the great trade of the prairies being used to enrich the lives of people in the East and build up their factories and workshops and contribute in every way to their prosperity. We knew that, but we didn't fill the rooms. So what's changed? I'll tell you what's changed, at least for me. Maybe you feel the same way. This whole time, my entire adult life, I've felt like government was evil. They're taxing us too much. They're not doing a good job. It's a bunch of waste. And I muttered about it all the time, a financial thing, right? But my whole life, I also believed that we lived in a democracy and we could vote and we could change things. Well, this spring, what we witnessed, again, after a absolutely catastrophic rule by Pierre Elliott Trudeau's possibly son. Sorry, I had to. People were thinking differently. We were thinking and feeling differently. And when we watched the elbows go up and Alberta get tossed to the side, entire Western Canada get tossed to the side again, and Canada elected a liberal government that hates Alberta, again, that was the last straw. And you know what? There wasn't, from the very start, there wasn't a damn thing we could do about it. As an Albertan, there is no way for you or for me to change that outcome if the East wants to continue with the status quo. We cannot do it. And if you don't believe me, look at the election results for the past 150 years. Look at who was in government when certain things happened. A great example is Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper was a great Albertan. He wrote the firewall letter. He showed us and taught us how Alberta could insulate themselves against a tyrannical federal government, or just a federal government that wasn't doing what we wanted. He became prime minister. And do you know how many of those things he did? 0. And it wasn't because he didn't believe in it. It wasn't because he didn't know that there was inequity between the East and inequity between the East and the West that needed to be fixed. He did it because in the business of federal politics in this country, you cannot become government if you try and fix those things. Pierre Poilievre had a massive campaign across Western Canada this cycle. He was leading by 30 points. We knew he was going to win. I stopped paying attention to his campaign, even though I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a WF plant, any of those things. I stopped paying attention when I watched him stand there and say, Alberta, you should stay within the CPP. It will be better for you. Well, now I've been traveling the province for 4 years, speaking about these types of things. I am literally a nobody. I make hamburgers, and I was a roughneck. I'm not a scholar, but I at least could look at the numbers and the math and the life work support, and I could realize that, wow, an Alberta pension plan really is way better for Albertans. Why are we not doing this? Like, it's just math. It's not rocket science. I know that as a nobody. And then I watched Poilievre stand up there campaigning to be the Prime Minister of Canada and tell Alberta that they shouldn't withdraw from the CPP. That was a lie. But it was a necessary lie if you want to become government federally in this country, because you cannot change the status quo. Andrew Scheer tried to change the status quo. Done. Pierre Poilievre spoke against the status quo in a different way. Done. And what I mean is, he spoke against the notion that we needed to put our elbows up and fight our neighbors to the south, our good neighbors to the south, instead of working with them like adults. And it lost him the election. When we saw that, that was the last straw for a lot of Albertans. The Alberta Prosperity Project, of which I was the CEO towards the beginning of last year, I resigned around the middle, was signing up 5,000 people per hour. 5,000 per hour. We went from struggling, balancing debt, trying to keep educating Albertans about the merits and benefits of independence, to having almost $500,000 to do things with, to run campaigns, to do events, all those types of things. And I'll tell you, even that amount of money is not enough to win. It's not. We want to do 100 meetings per month. 100 meetings across Alberta per month. That's 3 meetings per day. Because when you get the facts in front of Albertans, and they can set their emotional connection, their patriotism to the flag or to the country aside, and just look at the facts, the choice is completely obvious. It sells itself. Mark Carney sells Alberta Independence every time he does something. Danielle Smith sells Alberta Independence every time she tries to fight for Alberta and fails. And when we get these facts in front of people, they become independence-minded Albertans. And that's fantastic, but we have a ton of work to do. We have a group right now, the Forever Canadians group, who are using emotional triggers and half-truths to turn people against, I'm going to say us, because I believe everyone in this room is probably independence-minded. They're calling us traitors. That is a lie. I get accused of crimes on the internet all the time. They call me a traitor, sedition, all these things. I'm not doing any of those things. I'm exercising my democratic right under the Constitution of Canada. That's what I'm doing. My freedom to express my desire to create an independent nation of Alberta is protected under the Constitution. For you as well. They say that you're going to lose your pension. As a matter of fact, when they were campaigning to get their referendum question, should Alberta remain a part of Canada, they were telling people, you need to sign this, otherwise you're going to lose your pension. You need to sign this or you're going to end up part of the USA. You need to sign this or you're going to lose your citizenship. Well, does anybody in here want any of those things? I don't want to lose my citizenship. I don't want to become part of the USA. And what was the other one? Yeah, I don't want to lose my pension. But let me tell you something. When Alberta becomes independent, the borders are made. Probably not going to have to be defended super well because, I mean, we're all friends here. British Columbia doesn't want to take us over. We don't want to take them over. Things change, but you're still a Canadian. It is no different than if you move to France. If you move to France, you retain your Canadian citizenship. You retain your passport. That was the other one. You retain your pension. You retain all those things. You retain your mobility rights within Canada because nobody can ever take your citizenship away from you for any reason. You could go fight in the Middle East against the United States. You could engage in acts of terrorism overseas and kill U.S. soldiers and come back to Canada. And if Canada took your citizenship, you could sue and win $10.5 million. Do you remember that? Canadian citizenship is non-negotiable. It doesn't matter what you do. And yet, this group, led by a man who occupied one of the highest offices in government in Alberta, is telling people the contrary. He is actually lying to the people of Alberta and threatening the future of us and our children and our grandchildren. He's causing people to make emotional decisions regarding our future in which, instead of reaching down and saving our kids, we reach down and save the old guy. And this isn't something new. This has been happening for a few years, and we watched this. We really saw this during the pandemic. We saw people willing to sacrifice young people's futures so they felt safe. And I remember, I kind of sheepishly went to visit my very aged grandparents in British Columbia. And I said, Papa, I know you're old, and if you get sick, it might not go well for you. Is it better that I don't come there or I don't give you a hug or whatever? And he said, "Oh, Judas Priest, I can't believe people think like that." He said, "I would never ask my kids or you or grandkids or great-grandkids now to sacrifice or threaten their future so that I could feel safer. That's not what we do." And that's why Tim does what he does, even though people threaten his life. I've kind of started counting death threats as badges of honor because, when they can't debate with you, when they can't win the argument on the facts and on the evidence of logic and reason, they want you dead. That's why Charlie Kirk is dead. He's dead because people didn't want to talk to him because they couldn't win the argument. Now, when it comes to Alberta independence, you're going to have a lot of arguments. And I would, let me say this. If you find yourself getting into an argument with someone and it's threatening to disrupt the relationship that's important to you, stop. Just stop. Maintain your personal relationships with those you care about. Plant the seeds and then wait. Because I guarantee you, at some point, something's going to happen and they're going to feel something and they're going to go, "Oh, maybe they were right," and they're going to talk to you again. And that's how we win this. We're not going to win this by me or Tim or Shane standing up in front of a group of people and saying, "Hey, you need to vote for Alberta independence." We're going to win this by gathering unto ourselves, I don't say arm anymore because that'll be clipped on Facebook, gathering unto ourselves the knowledge we need, the education we need to have these conversations. And then when you hear somebody say, "Alberta can never leave because of the treaties. It's treaty land and it belongs to somebody else, it's not yours," you could say, "Well, actually, I took the time to read the treaties, and the treaties say the land was ceded permanently forever to the Crown, and the First Nations groups have territorial rights for hunting, fishing, things like that. But no, it doesn't mean that they own the land or that we can't govern ourselves in a different manner." You can go into it a little further. You can go into the Constitution and read how that looks. People could say, "Well, you can never be independent in Alberta because you'd have to amend the Constitution. And you can say, well, actually, no, Section 154 of the Supreme Court ruling says that you can actually unilaterally declare independence if you have a referendum and democracy rules, and then it's the responsibility of Canada to amend their constitution after. Like all of these things. And on that note, remember I said earlier that I still haven't heard an opposition that can't be turned into a reason for independence? Our Prime Minister right now, Mark Carney, is no slouch. He wrote a book called Values, and in that book, he mentions that the ordinary person, and that's you're the ordinary people, and me, not him, he's extraordinary, are going to have to give up some convenience or comfort in order to sustain. That's kind of his thing. He hates capitalism. He hates, sorry, the phone ringing really got me there. Thanks a lot. Just kidding. I thought it was actually my son. He hates capitalism and he hates energy use. He wants to be net zero and no capitalism, everybody in their box and the government decides. So if we have this constitution that says it protects us from these things, and I can tell you that it doesn't because I went through that. I went through a stage in my life where I had to try and use my rights, exercise my charter rights, and lo and behold, I ended up actually going to jail and being fined $30,000, 18 months probation, compelled speech order, and not allowed to leave the province for the crime of protesting government policy on my own land. That's why I went to jail. And now we have a prime minister who is saying things like, we need to look at the notwithstanding clause because the provinces shouldn't be sovereign in their matters. Provinces shouldn't be able to block. Well, the notwithstanding clause was the only reason why the provinces agreed to sign that in the first place. That wasn't going to get done. There was 8 provinces, 8 premiers who said no freaking way, and they said, okay, well, we'll give you the notwithstanding clause, and that's what got them to sign. He doesn't like it because it doesn't have control. He also doesn't like the idea or the notion that a province can decide whether or not they want to be within Confederation. So if we open and amend the Constitution, if we exceed that very, very large, almost impossible threshold to do it, with an administration that believes the things they do right now, what do you think the outcome is going to be? It's not going to be good for Alberta. We're not going to get a better deal. We're probably going to get a worse deal. And if that happens, it's no longer just the democratic will of the people and international recognition that allows independence. Then people are going to go to jail just like they did in Spain. Right now, our Constitution allows us to decide. And we've never decided before. We were never, ever asked. We were a colony, a territory, and Parliament legislated us into existence without our consent. It wasn't like someone came here and we had town halls, or they had town halls, and they said, hey, do you guys want to become part of this Dominion to Canada? It's going to be great. You're going to produce from your resources. You're going to send everything over to Eastern Canada. They're going to prosper, but you guys are going to be kind of under the boot. Oh, and by the way, you're not going to be able to influence elections. You can vote, but it's not going to really matter because the vote is going to be over at the Manitoba border. Oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention this. You're only going to get 2 Senate seats, and Ontario and Quebec combined are going to have 72. So would you like to join? That never happened. We were never given a choice. So it's time that we actually stand up and we do something about this. It's time that we recognize that nobody is going to come and save us. The only people that are going to affect our futures are us. Accept the responsibility that comes with knowing that we failed to act before, and that's why we're here, and we get it done. Right now, we're starting to collect signatures, not for leaving Canada. The signature collection is to trigger a referendum with the question, what's the question? How does it go, Bonnie? Word for word? You got it in front of you? Do you agree that Alberta should cease to be part of Confederation and become an independent state? Not a United States of America state, but a state as an independent nation. That's what this petition is for. After that, it becomes the provincial government's responsibility to decide when and how the referendum is held. They also get to choose what the question is going to look like. Now, we're putting some very, very significant pressure on the government to make sure that that question has constitutional teeth, because we want to do this the easy way, through the Clarity Act, the path that's laid out by Quebec kind of thing. So the government is going to eventually ask Albertans if they want to become an independent nation. Well, what do you think has to be done between then and now? We need to build support. We need to work tirelessly to get the facts to people, to break down the emotional barriers, and get them to understand that this is how we take control of our futures. And this is the single most important thing we can ever do in our lifetimes to give our children a chance, a better chance. Some of your friends might say, well, I fought for this country and my grandfather fought for this country. No, they didn't. They fought for freedom. And if a lot of those people who were fighting to be free and make sure their grandchildren were going to be free saw what occurred in the last 10 years in this country, they would roll over in their graves. So this is how we fight. The currency, as my friend Mitch says, the currency that we're going to pay for our freedom going forward isn't blood like our ancestors paid. It's time. That's all we need to do, is spend our time, give our time, and have the conversations. And if you feel like you don't know enough about this, come to more APP events. I learn something new every time. Go to the Alberta Prosperity website. They have a huge amount of information that you can look at to know these things. Read things like the Clarity Act. Read the Constitution. Read the treaties. It's very exciting, all of these things. And if you want, you could also go to my website, whistlestoptruckstop.ca. I've been blogging. Every time I have an idea and I get this, like I come up with kind of a thesis and I say, okay, well, it seems to me like, this is an example. It seems to me like Canada wasn't necessarily created by a grassroots movement of people who declared independence or decided they wanted to be a country. It seems to me like a group of Canadian elite and London elite made kind of a business deal so that Canada didn't become part of the United States. So I start looking into this, and I spent a couple weeks researching this, and lo and behold, that is exactly how we became a country. So I wrote a blog about it. It's on my website. It's called What Business Have Ye With Me, Your Majesty. Basically, I'm asking, why, English Crown, sorry, Your Majesty in the back there, why are you interfering in my life? You're not my monarch. You're not my king. We're a self-governing nation. I also write about Alberta Independence things. When I hear people opposing something or they're trying to slam me on Facebook by saying, you're going to be landlocked, I write a blog. And I write all those things. And I debate myself in there. You can find so much information just in that. You don't even have to do the research yourself. However, I would suggest that you fact check me, although I do ask ChatGPT and Grok both to fact check me before I write the blog. So there is that. Anyway, my point is, there's a ton of information out there. You can equip yourself with that information and start having these conversations and shut the lying tyrants down when they try and turn your friends and your family against you. Shut it down. Don't let them get away with lying, because that's what they're doing. I can't believe that an ex-deputy premier of Alberta is telling people they're going to lose their Canadian citizenship. That is how low they have to stoop to try and counter the independence argument. And the reason for it is because the truth is the truth, without reservation. Alberta independence is necessary, and that's the only way we're going to fix the things we want to fix, including equalization. And it is inevitable, because Canada is in a state of managed decline where the politicians are smiling and happy while people can't afford to eat and heat their homes. It's necessary and inevitable. Thank you.
Up here you see freedomcalendar.net. That is this fellow Max. If you want to watch any other events or watch some other live streams, are you live streaming this today? Yes. So this is being live streamed. Chris is also live streaming it. But if you go on here and take a picture of the QR code, it takes you to his site. And you can watch them from wherever. Stettler, you can watch me in Stettler. I heard that was a good one. Got people from everywhere. The other thing is, at the back, I have a few of these left. They're trifold brochures. And I will be getting more. People are handing them out to their friends, neighbors. They're asking businesses if they can put them in the business. If your circles are different than mine. Take what you've got. Please clean me out. If you want more, I have a list back there beside Sheane. Put your name, and I will get you more as soon as I get them from Mitch. You can also print them off the APP site. They're just not pretty and shiny. So, if that doesn't matter to you. The other thing is, Max gave me a note. So on January 10th, there's a few things going on. There's an event in Red Deer at Legacy Place. That's a Jason Levine event, but APP will have a presence there. And I just got notification that if anybody has gotten their canvasser things yet, they have been invited to collect signatures at the Jason Levine event on the 10th in Red Deer at Legacy Place. And Max's event is January 10th, and it's Dennis Call. Yes, you may. Oh, you want me to come and bring it?
So basically, there's going to be on the 7th of January at 7 p.m., I'm going to be interviewing Dennis Kelma. If you see all those, the papers with the value of freedom document, I'm going to interview the co-author of that document, along with Jeff Radd. Jeff Radd is one of the guys who wrote the document. Dennis Kelma is the guy who wrote most of them. So we're going to align, basically going to see all the document in very, very detailed. And if you have any questions like what's going to happen when MSPP, who's going to fund a Alberta Army, those things is on the document. So it's going to be on my live stream on next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Also, another APP event. There's one scheduled in Calgary. I'm going to live stream that as well. We're going to have Corey Morgan, Dennis Kalma, of course, and Evia Shipyuk. That's going to be on the 10th of January at 7 p.m. if you're in the Calgary region. Yes, I prefer people come here to those events here in Red Deer because we're in Central Alberta. But because I have about 200 people watching right now who are not there in Central Alberta, there's one in Calgary as well too. So thank you very much. And
yeah. So there's lots of stuff going on. I just counted on the calendar that I can see. In the next 27 days, there are 30 events, and that doesn't include Sundays because we try not to do things on Sundays. So there are lots of events going on up north, central, south. So go on the APP website and look under events and invite people. Be their ride. If they say, well, I just can't, and I go, I'll pick you up at 6:30. Yes, there's a huge rally in January 26th down at the BMO Center. So I'm hoping to get to that one because I missed the rally in Edmonton. So Q&A. The Q&A boys need to come up here. Somebody can ask a question. Yeah. So anybody have a question? Over here. I forget.
I'm just gonna pass the microphone, okay? So just gonna keep the questions on the 20 seconds. No statements. Go ahead.
One thing that appears to be missing is data for the younger generation. Around the world, the only ones changing anything are the under 30s. We need some actual data on the immigration people coming in, the temporary foreign workers, how much of a loss that is for our people, our kids. We need some data that relates to them because they don't care which way it goes. They just want change.
I don't have that data. I don't know that APP has put any of that data together. Chris has that data. Chris, would you come up here, please? Okay.
Hold on, I'm just going to get my microphone to you.
And the other thing is, I know we don't see a lot of young people at events, but they're out there. They just have got kids, jobs, etc. My son who works in the oil patch, I said, David, and he goes, Mom, there isn't one guy in the oil patch that would not sign that petition.
That's what I was getting at. We do that all the time. So there's webinars, podcasts on those things like constantly. Every time something comes up in the news, something that's affecting the next generation, we're doing a podcast on it. So you can follow my page or the Alberta Prosperity Project page. Berta Proud Dad, he's great. He's got a lot of that information. And I would say there's probably at least 36 channels between YouTube and Facebook that talk about these things all the time.
And when you're mentioning podcasts, I would encourage everybody to go see Chris's live stream from last night. It is not only very informative, but it's one of the funniest replies that you'll see. So there, I gave you a shout out, Chris.
Anybody else have a question? Please. Or these guys will be around for a little while. I'll be here till the chairs all get stacked and I get my deposit back. Lacey.
Hold on, I'm just going to get my
Lacey.
microphone. Well,
it's not really a question, but I live just south of Alex. And if you've got neighbors, friends, family that maybe is a little bit uncomfortable of coming to a public setting to come listen. I experienced that. So I said to my husband, let's host an event. So we did it at our farm. I personally called 120 people. We had 98 show up, and probably 85 to 90% of our family and friends, folks, neighbors that did come had never been to an event before, and they all left mind blown. So just try and do that. If you can't get them to come to an event or can't convince them, host something at your house, have it at a farm, get people to come, and you'll be surprised who comes because they're a lot more comfortable to come to your own personal space.
and from my understanding, that was also live stream as well, too.
it
On
was.
Starlink.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got any questions before I lend the mic to somebody? Raise your hand here.
Yeah, because even if it's coffee hour, if you can get 10 people to your house for coffee, I can probably sweet talk Chris into going. There's also another lady, she lives up by Sherwood Park. That is her and her friend. It's a women's. They love to speak to coffees for women. But Kathy's great. Kathy Flett is fantastic. But she'll come to your house or your shop or your barn or riding arena, whatever. And so it does not have to be like this. If you want an event like that, you get a hold of somebody from APP. In this area, it would be Bonnie or me or Shane or Chris, for that matter. It's okay. He's got his mouth full, so he can't argue with me. If you want something like that, get a hold of one of us. We'll get somebody there to your house to speak. The other thing is, the Stay Free Alberta website will hopefully be up and running more by, they say, Monday, so I'm going Wednesday. So it'll be Wednesday. Yes. And on there will be a button for a canvasser. So if you talk to somebody and they say, oh yeah, I'd like to do that, put them on there. They hit that button, they fill in their information, and then it gets to whatever area they're supposed to, and they'll get connected. The other thing, when we talk about, I talked to my friend yesterday from Ken. He's from Camrose area. He's my new friend. I met him through APP, and I sent his information to the Camrose ladies, and they said, well, Ken didn't want to be a canvasser. Well, I talked to him yesterday, and now he does. So when he was trying to get a road stopped in Camrose County, he went to the county reeve, who I know, and he says, we want to get this road stopped. It's a stupid road, but it was one of the other county councilors that wanted it. He says, no, this is stupid. It's an accident waiting to happen because you can't even get the semi across the tracks before you're hitting another intersection. Guy says, well, you need this many signatures. You'll never get them. He came back within the required amount of time, and he had double the required signatures. He went door to, he just drove around the county. He said, I did 20 stops a night. So right now, because I looked before I came up, we have almost 241,000 people signed up with APP. That has continued to grow and grow and grow and grow because I think it grew by about 300 to 400 people yesterday. Because I looked yesterday and I looked and went, hokey. We want the number of signatures. Lukaszik's original number was 477,000. I think it was something like that. We want 1 million. Because 1 million plus says to the Alberta government that the people of Alberta are serious. They want a say in whether we stay or not. So we're only required 177,000. Well, APP's almost got double that already. But that's not what we want. We want 1 million. So that means you guys taking those sheets out and driving around to your neighbors. So canvassers can go back there if you're interested. Go to that corner and sign up. We've all talked about how important it is. There's no bigger fight for this generation than right now. Yes?
Hold on, just going to get my microphone.
One thing that Keith Wilson mentioned that's worth bringing up to canvassers is that most young people don't know how to write. And Elections Alberta write legibly. Elections Alberta took away all the signatures for everyone that they considered illegible.
Okay, so just to answer that question, when Lukaszik did his, they were not required. In fact, they could not ask for ID. We are required to have ID just like if you were going to vote. So you have to have an Alberta driver's license or a photo ID as well as like a, doesn't have your address on it. You government issued ID, and if it doesn't have an address, then you have to bring a utility bill with your name and address on it. Whatever, something with your name and address on it, okay? So, and then we're telling our canvassers, take their driver's license and fill out the form, turn the form back around, let them sign and check the box that says they are legal to vote, because we will get much better forms that way. And my friend says, use your best Canadian taught printing, because we know that people in other countries, sometimes their letters are different. I say use your best grade 3 Mrs. Swenson teaching. And so that's one thing that the canvassers will be able to do this time around that Lukaszik's couldn't, is we can take their ID, because we have to ask for it now, fill out the form, turn it around, and have them sign it. Because we know there's a lot of seniors out there, or people that don't bring their glasses, not to say anything. You know, because it helps. If you've got a little bit of Parkinson's, your printing is terrible. you know, or anyway, so that will be covered. We can get that legible stuff done. Anything else? Okay, anybody who wants to be, okay, I'm going to do a little bit on this petition stuff. So the website will be up. You can fill out a canvasser button. It goes to the appropriate place. And my understanding is then you will be sent a training video to watch and send back that you have watched it, okay? But this afternoon, because that stuff isn't up and because we have a gathering, if you have any inclination, maybe haven't totally decided, we've got actually 2 laptops here. I'd have to figure out how to get it on mine, but Bonnie's is there. We can just turn it around and you can watch it, and then we click off that you've watched it, and if you have got a signed NDA, we send it all in. It goes into Elections Alberta. You will get an email that you DocuSign and send back, and then it's good to go. And then you'll get their information whenever Elections Alberta decides to do their thing. Oh yeah, we'll just hook it up here fancy like. I don't do fancy like. So yeah, please, there's coffee back there. There's water. So if you just want to stay and visit, we don't have any time to leave here. So if you want to do that, but those of you who want to watch the canvasser training, pull up a chair so it's closer or whatever, and we'll get that going. Yeah. No, we cannot live. Yeah, we're done with live stream. Sorry, Max. Yes.